Thanks, Buhle. The anti-xenophobia march planned by the activist movement against xenophobia attacks is expected to take place today after an earlier decision by the Johannesburg Metro Police Department to ban the gathering was overturned. It comes as Nhlanhla Lux, the leader of Operation Dudula, is detained at the Johannesburg Central Police Station. Union Giwusa is expected to join the activists in a march to Newzroom Afrika in Newtown this morning. Spokesperson Mametlwe Sebei joins us now. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. You as a union are preparing yourself to be part of the march this morning. Talk to us about some of the reasons why you're joining in.
Because we do think that there is really no basis to scapegoating the migrants, many of whom are poor working class people, jobs and just, ways of surviving, having run away from the war situation and other human rights violations in jurisdiction where they originate, to scapegoat them for the problems that we are having, the problems that are very genuine, that we could be addressing, problems of unemployment, of deepening poverty, of crime, and all of these problems are problems of the failures of this government and its policies of the past 27 years, are the failures of the corporate domination of our industries, of our economies, and the failures of the investment of those corporations to create jobs that we need desperately. Those are people who must be held to account, not poor migrants.
And it's important that you speak about policy, because we also heard from the Labour Minister, Giwusa speaking about a quota system for foreign nationals and the details around how they are now going in and trying to find solutions to a problem that has been ignored for a relatively long period of time.
I mean, his proposals are not solutions at all. I mean, when you deprive, decent, law-abiding people of any way of any means of making, a very lawful and gainful employment or, legitimate ways of making an income, what do you expect? You are going to get more crime. And that's what the people of this country are concerned about. What we need to be able to do is how do we structure the economy in such a way that it begin to create jobs on the scale that we need. And I'm talking about, millions of jobs that we need to overcome the unemployment that today stands at 12.5 million, to overcome the poverty that stands at half of the population of the country, to overcome the crisis of lack of infrastructure, lack of basic services like education, like health, and all of that. Now, if Minister Ngesi has a solution, he had an opportunity, for instance. He was intervening in the crisis in Clover, where he intervened as a mediator, where you have a company that invested in Clover and oldest dairy manufacturer in this country, is destroying jobs, is closing factories. As a Minister of Labour and Employment, he was sitting there idle, doing absolutely nothing, and expecting us to agree that thousands of jobs must be destroyed, that over 62% wage cuts must go unchallenged. Now, these are problems that are at core of the deepening problems of poverty, the issues of unemployment, and the fact that even now government is hosting, investment conference, inviting the very same interests that are plundering and destroying our industry here as solutions, instead of beginning to say, how do we move from this very parasitic foreign corporate, investment into public investment on, manufacturing capacity in this country? How do we begin to take into public ownership key sectors of the economy so that we're able, one, to plan our economy in such a way that we can reindustrialize this country and create, millions of jobs, but also how do we then mobilize those resources to unleash, roll out a public works program to rebuild our infrastructure, to rebuild our services, but also in the course of doing that, overcome the problems of unemployment and poverty. That is at the core of the problems that, concern many working class and poor people who unfortunately, at the behest and at instigation of opportunistic politicians, none of whom have solution to the fundamental problems faced by the working class, are beginning now to turn against each other, because these politicians are scapegoating the poor for the failures of their own policies as government, but also for the impotence of the bourgeois or capitalist opposition in this country to provide solutions to those problems that are faced by the working class and poor majority in this country.
Some community members, and of course referring here to Operation Dudula, how community members, South African community members, came together to highlight the issue of unemployment. The tone seems to have changed, and the blame seems to have shifted in a way that is not supported by the actual statistics when it comes to the ratio of foreign nationals and access to jobs and crime. What do you make of the movement's motives and the messaging that they're trying to get across, especially now that we see some movement from government officials?
So, I mean, firstly, there's been a lot that has been said in recent days about this figure of, Nhlanhla Lux and his Dudula movement. But I think suffice to say, the fact that he belonged to the ANC, as it has become clear, from his activities and other things and so on. And this is a party that has been in government for 27 years and has presided over the deepening unemployment, the deepening poverty, the collapse of public services, the failure to, put forward, a program of public, infrastructure, reconstruction and building as it was promised in 1994 and all of that. And to guarantee the better life for all and so on, itself reflected that this or behind this movement is a self-serving program of people that actually have failed to deliver on the needs of South African people, and of course, their scapegoating and diverting attention. The issue of unemployment, of number of people that are employed. It is true that there are sectors where we've seen and growth in terms of employment of migrants, but there are also sectors where we've seen decline. In the late 80s, early 90s, in the mining industry, over 70% of workers there used to be foreign migrants. That number has come drastically down, meaning therefore that, tens of thousands of workers there now are South Africans when they used to be migrants. So there are also those shifts and so on. But also in number of industries, it's true that unemployment and people are losing jobs, but that has nothing to do with the fact that it's migrants who are moving in those jobs. As I was saying, at SAB, South African Breweries, 2,000 workers are losing job losses. At Masmat, it's closing number of stores. But it's not just these two companies. It's over. I can count many industries that are shedding jobs on industrial scale. Now, these are issues we have got to be speaking to. But of course, we've got to be speaking to in terms of solutions that are very, viable, and blaming people that at most, they're saying that their main target now is migrants because you are right. They've been shifting a goalpost. Most of the migrants that you see and that are said to be illegal, these are poor, disparate, working class people who want documentation and are refused documentation. In terms of my employment, I work at Lawyers for Human Rights. I can tell you that every single day there is long queues of migrants, of refugees who want to be documented, who want to be regularized. And they are being denied by impossible administration at Home Affairs, but also just policies of this government. So the condition of illegality as well, which is what the movement has been emphasizing in recent times, is created by this government, and that is government of Nhlanhla Lux, a government of the ANC that is also failing to address the problems of unemployment and poverty of the overwhelming majority of the working class and poor people in this country.
So what are you hoping to add as you take part of this anti-xenophobia march as Giwusa?
What we're saying is that, and as you have said before, the issue of xenophobia, as with racism and all these other forms of hate that are encouraged by sections of the ruling class, of politicians among the poor, they divide the movement, they undermine the cohesion and the unity of the only force, the working class, which when united and move in unity and with purpose and with a clear perspective and direction over the crisis that it faces, the crisis in the economy, which we say that is a crisis of capitalism, is a crisis of the system that doesn't benefit them in any event, it can be able to make headways, including in a struggle to fight unemployment. And I do think that we have, an instructive example. When young people united in a Fist Must Fall movement, across racial, across nationality divide. They achieved a lot in terms of pushing the frontiers of access to education. When the Mine Workers United in 2012, they managed to achieve a lot of gains. And we are saying that today than ever before, the problems of unemployment, the problems of poverty, the problems of collapse in public services, and all these other things that the working class need requires that we unite in our organization, but also build a movement that can be directed against this government, against the corporate elite that are plundering, that are destroying the economy, that are destroying industry, and therefore plunging people into even deeper levels of unemployment, of poverty, and desperation. That's what we need. And we are there. We are going to be supporting the march to say we cannot, no matter how disparate our situation is, sacrifice our own unity as a working class. We need to unite as trade unions, as community civics, as youth, in the movement that can be able to confront the logic of the corporate interests that today are closing factories, that are restructuring, many workplaces in a way that makes sure that even workers that are working,
if you'll allow me to interrupt you there. I understand that the impasse between Clover workers is now heading to court. Talk to us about that, and perhaps do you also feel that you've been failed by government, the Labour Minister?
In fact, the idea of court was raised by government itself on the basis of the legal opinion that it commissioned. Now government made a complete turn on that and saying that it agreed to take the matter to court. It lied about the legal opinion on the basis that they acted under duress. And it is clear from the interview of the president yesterday when he was interviewed about the protest that we had at the investment conference, that they are behind Clover and they are in absolute support of the closure of factories. They are in support of restructuring, including the wage cuts and the savagery of the conditions of our members. And that's the reason we say these are people that are responsible for all the crises that people like, Nhlanhla Lux, Dudula movement are scapegoating on other sections of the working class who happen to be foreign migrants.
Very well. Let's leave it there for now. Thank you for your time, Giwusa Spokesperson Mametlwe Sebei, speaking there about some of the developments around the anti-xenophobia march. Giwusa, the General Industries Workers Union of South Africa, forming part of that march, which is set to resume at 9 o'clock this morning.